Hello everybody and welcome back to another Kings of War tournament report. I'm Visibly Riley, and today we'll be covering day 2, so games 4 and 5 of the Rose City Rumble. Just to recap, I just came off of 3 big wins versus some excellent players, and was coming into day 2 undefeated. And there was only one other undefeated in the group at that point, so pretty good, and my wins were very big, especially considering we were playing on Blackjack, and in Blackjack it increases the granularity from the top to the bottom as opposed to normal Kings of War, just due to, it's not winning by an inch or a mile, it's how many, what the differential in victory points was and what the differential in attrition was, so a bit more. So anyway, as a small recap, let's go into my army. First off, we have the Mummy's Revenge, which has a Cursed High Priest. Mine has the Banner of the Griffin and Heal 4 upgrades. Then 2 regiments of mummies, both of whom gain Vicious and Elite in that formation. Then I have a Horde of Revenants with the Brew of Strength, a Regiment of Scavengers, a Horde of Revenant Chariots, a Cursed High Priest with Heal 4, the Idol of Shobik, Mortibris, 2 Bone Giants, and a Soul Snare. So, going into game 4, and I am versus Trident Realm again. I actually knew this was going to happen at the end of day 1 because, again, there were only 2 undefeated people, and this was the other one. So let's take a quick look at my opponent's army, which opens with a regiment of Naiad Heart Piercers. At least I think this is my opponent's army. I got 2250 out of it, so I think I'm right. So I've got a regiment of Heart Piercers, followed by a horde of Placoderms with Brew of Strength, 2 hordes of Naiad Worm Riders, one of whom has the Blessing of the Gods. Then we have Ector, Siren, and the Trident King, the Holy Trinity of Trident Realm. Then Double Knucker, Double Kraken. So it's a very elite Trident Realm army, and definitely a very cool one. Not what I would do in particular, but I think it is very strong, as I would expect from this opponent. So here we see the table. Let's go over what the terrain is first, and then I'll get into the scenario. So first off, we have a height 6 forest in the bottom right corner. Right above that, we have a height 2 hill. To the left of that, we have a height 4 impassable, and we are running it as the entire base, which I actually ran in every game, same thing, with a height 1 obstacle attached to it. Below that, we have a height flat area piece of terrain. Then above it, we have a height 6 forest. Below that, to the left, we've got a big ol' height 2 hill with a height 1 obstacle attached to it. And finally, not actually finally, we have a height 4 obstacle as well, or not, impassable, not obstacle, which again is the whole base. And right on up here, just like deep in this deployment zone, is a height flat piece of terrain. So, the terrain layout it's interesting. It's very central, right? Like, and I'm seeing this a lot with the Portland guys, especially, where they're not putting any terrain in deployment zones, right? It's difficult in Kings of War because you don't want to, you can't put hills in there. It's too big of an advantage. And then if you put impassable, it messes with the deployment zones. But I would say I'd prefer to have, and I'm not saying like, I remember I played a game in an event last year that had a giant piece of difficult terrain and then 2 pieces of impassable, right, on each side. So I was like, well, I've got all these rat cannon, literally I can't put a horde that's not in difficult terrain, so that's cool. But I'm not saying do that, but some of these forests could be a little deeper, right? Like, I get that the center of the table is, where the action is, but still, I'd like to see some terrain in the deployment zones. That way it's not just like, put your army here. You did it. So anyway, besides that, let's talk about the scenario real quick. We are playing Plunder, and Plunder is a pretty interesting scenario. I actually like it a lot. So first off, you've got the center line of the table. You put 1 objective marker in the dead center, and then each player takes turn putting out tokens, but it doesn't matter because they have to be 12 inches apart, so they have a very set deployment, right? So they end up being 12 inches apart, and then each player chooses 1 of the tokens, starting with the player who chose table sides. You choose 1 token to be worth 2 VP. So I chose this token to be worth 2 VP, and my opponent mirrored me with that token being worth 2 VP. I went with this one because there's this big old piece of impassable right in front of it for my opponent, so it's very difficult for them to get to. And obviously they went with this one just because it's very easy for them to get to. So same thing. And then we did our deployments. Let's start with the Trident Realm. So we've got right here the actually if I go forward a slide, we've got this, and I would like to say, so I've actually shot this battle report already. I did the whole report, and then I realized I wasn't running OBS at all because, you know, that's what you do. But so anyway, I forgot to talk about, I really like this army. The way it looks, right? I like Trident Realm too. It's cool, and I like this list. It's very interesting. But I especially like the way this army looks. And it's not very, I don't think it's very technically high up there, right? But that's not really what interests me in looking at miniatures anymore. I mean, because honestly, if you want to talk craftsmanship or if you want to talk about painting, you're talking about mostly craftsmanship, and you're talking about honing your skills, right? What I'm interested in is seeing people's expression. So what do they do, right? Like, what are they trying to get out there? And this army is a great explanation of that, right? You got the Mantic models over here. Just looking at the color choices, right? This classic orange on blue, great combo. Then you've got these giant Krakens, and this opponent's army is always shifting, right? There's always new models being put into it, crazier stuff. So yeah, I love it. And again, it's not the most technically well executed army, but it's one of my favorites. So anyway, we've got the Worm Riders. First off, starting on the left here, we've got Worm Rider Horde 1 with nothing, and then Worm Rider Horde 2 with the Blessing of the Gods. Then we have Kraken 1. Behind that Kraken, we have, ooh, that arrow's on him. That's the Trident King. To the right of the Kraken, that is the Siren, and we're actually going to roll back to the previous picture because it's a little easier. So this is the Siren. To the right of the Siren, we have the Placoderms. Then to the right of them, we've got the Naiad Heartpiercers. Right behind them, we have both of the Knuckers, one of them hiding behind the second Kraken. And then lastly, we've got Ector just right here in the middle. So very tight deployment, but I think this is the only game this event that I outdropped my opponent. It's definitely the only one so far. Going back to the Empire of Dust deployment, we have Shobik, followed by the Double Giant. Behind the Giants, we have the Banner the Griffin, Cursed High Priest with heal 4. Then we've got the Horde of Chariots, the Horde of Revenants with Proof Strength. Behind them, the heal 4 Cursed High Priest, the Soul Snare, both the Mummies, and Mortibris. So this matchup is very interesting to me because Trident Realm is about the worst thing I can fight. Just because, to me, right? Because Trident Realm is fairly difficult as I'm not running a lot of shooting. I've got the Soul Snare, but it doesn't always roll that well. And I don't have that many shots, right, in the list. And then almost everything, with the exception, in fact, everything with the exception of Shobik here, hits on at best a 4+, and that ensnare is big. So when there's even, just this modicum of terrain on the table, I can easily be hitting on 6s for 1 to 2 rounds, or if my opponent chooses not to countercharge, even more. So it is weird in that way, but there are plenty of units that don't have ensnare in the army. Like neither the Worm Riders have ensnare, the Placoderms don't have ensnare anymore. So I've got these the big hordes in the army don't have that rule, right? And on top of it, I do have a Soul Snare, which is, as I said before, it's a great unit. I mean, in general, but against Trident Realm especially, because none of their tricks work on it, so getting into cover does nothing, and then their defense is very low for the most part. So like we've got Def 6 here, but then these monsters cab, those are Def 4. These giant monsters, Def 4. This Def 3, right? So yeah, you can definitely get through them. And then on top of it, I have all these giants, which if I get flank charges using Surge with my giants here, I can kill any of this stuff, right? Like the second they don't have ensnare, that's a good game, right? So a very cool game, very interesting. I think my behind this forest is where the scavengers are. So let's move forward. Turn 1. So turn 1 ends up going to the Trident Realm, and I think I won the roll-up on this one and decided that I wanted to get a turn of shooting with my with my soul snare, right? Like I didn't want to waste that turn. And on top of it, well, one, there was that. Two, my opponent can't shoot me with anything that isn't... No, not even Ector. None of them can shoot. And then on top of it, he's running a very elite army. So if he pushes, like tries to zone me out of getting these loot tokens, I can either let him have the loot tokens, it'll slow him down, which is one of the major advantages of this army over mine, or I can just surge into him. So yeah, I think that it's essentially a lost turn for my opponent to have the first one here. The last thing I'd like to talk about is the Siren. So I know I mentioned this in a not too recent, but I played against a Trident Realm player a couple weeks ago at least, and I remember playing the game and I went, oh, you can't cast Siren's Call onto my chariots, right? They got pulled forward, and I went, oh, that doesn't work because you can't Siren's Call them. And my opponent was like, well, why is that? And I said, well, you can't. And I remember I was like, oh, I don't remember, and then I got it confused. I conflated it with the rule for loot tokens, which is if you have a loot token, you can't be surged, nor can you be hit with Wind Blast, and I just mixed the two in my head. But on top of that, the Siren's Call just has a caveat in it that says you cannot cast this on shambling units. So I was right, I just couldn't figure out why. And so in my army, I only have the Soul Snare, the Scavengers, and then all three of my priests that the Siren can really Siren's Call forward. So I'm pretty well protected against that as well. Anyway, my opponent advances forward, basically going as fast as the placoderms want to move, and then everyone else just sort of kept pace with them, right? Or moved around that, right? I think that there are a few mistakes here. One, these Heart Piercers moved a little too far forward, right? Because they just walked into range of the Soul Snare, Mortar Briss is somewhere over here, and the Chariots, right? So I can get some serious shooting onto them. And I might be even able to pop them this turn, right? Like with just a little bit of luck, I could easily get them out of here. And two, this Knucker in the top right corner. So this Knucker moved a little pensively, right? Like it's, you know, it's not, it definitely moved pretty far, but it didn't move as far as it can, I don't think. And I kind of wonder about that because I don't think the Soul Snare would be able to, even if it moved like over here, right? The Soul Snare, since we ran this whole thing as the terrain, is not going to be able to see that. At best, maybe I get Mortibriss's shot, and it has stealthy, so it's, you know, Lightning Bolt 4 on a stealthy model. Def 4, it's not going to do anything. And then, so yeah, it's just a little weird for me. I think I want to clear the terrain a bit more, personally. But anyway, otherwise, I like the movement. It's pretty solid, keeping one of the Krakens back just to make it so I will collapse the flank here because I'm much stronger on this side of the table, right? And obviously my opponent has control over this side. So yeah, just sort of have that curve back, right? And anyway, let's move forward. There's not a whole lot else to say. So we move on to turn 1 for the Empire of Dust. I advance forward with most of my army. Now some of it does stay back because this is going to be a very weird first couple turns because, you know, we're both running such elite lists that you know, playing these little cat and mouse games it's a big part of it. So first off, I move the giant. This giant here is within charge range of this Kraken and nothing else. So these Worm Riders can charge to about here, or maybe they can charge to the fence, but not any farther. The Trident King, who is hiding behind the Kraken, is facing like this, so it just doesn't have the line of sight. And then since I can't be, I mean, there's no Surgibles, but can't be Siren's Call as well. I'm out of charge range of these Placoderms. This Knucker could charge, but that would require some some fancy footwork, right? Like I'm not quite flush. I think I'm not quite flush here, so maybe the Knucker could go like this and then like this, right? Because it does have Nimble, but still, this is a barrier and it doesn't have Strider. So I'm just trying to tempt this Kraken in. It would be a big mistake to charge me with that because I can dismantle it and then get ready for the charge from the Placoderms and the Snakes by stopping them from being able to really combo charge on anything but one of the giants, the outside giant, right? So that's the idea. I keep the Chariots back because, again, I'm going to shoot at the Heart Piercers, and then I move forward with my center, moving my Soul Snare, obviously, to get a line of sight here. Mortibrus actually ends up moving a little bit to the left, I believe, either to the left or to the right, just to get line of sight so I can get that lightning bolt off, because I just hadn't finished my movement yet. And here's something that catches people unawares a lot. Scavengers aren't used that commonly in Empire of Dust, and they don't have shambles, so they just fly up and sit on a 2-point token. I'm not sure I talked about what the scenario was. So in Plunder, you get, maybe I did. Let's go over it real quick. You get 5 loot tokens. They're 12 inches apart. They're all in the center line. It's pretty simple. Then the player that deploys first chooses one of the tokens to be worth 2 points. I did the one I have put on the right there with the arrow. My opponent, I definitely talked about this. But the big thing is that they're loot tokens, so you can pick them up. They make you speed 5. You can't be surged. You lose nimble and flight and no wind blast, right? And then on top of this, the gold ones, so the ones that we had chosen, are worth 2 VP if you hold them at the end of the game. The other 3 are all worth 1 VP. So if you get both gold tokens, you win. But this is blackjack, so it's about how much you win by, right? So anyway, the birds fly over, grabbing the 2-point token. Again, this Knucker is not threatening me at all. It wouldn't have been able to charge, right? But it's gonna have to like go around and around, right? Like, and the mummies are here now, so I have control. So I'm not sure about that. This Kraken could run forward. It can't charge me, but if it does that, the mummies will kill it. The plan is to have the scavengers grab this token and then just back up. Either back up or go forward. I don't care which, because I'm just trying to make it so this Kraken comes around, because all my opponent's real speed is over here, right? So he's going to have to waste a lot of turns doing that, and there's still a decent threat here, right? You're going to go right across my army? Nah, I don't think so. So that's the plan. With my shooting, I fire the Soul Snare, Mortibrus, and the Chariots all into the Heart Piercers. On average, let's see, the Soul Snare does 5 wounds on average, or 4 if you want to be generous to them. But like 5 wounds on average, then you get 1 from Mortibrus, 1 from the Chariots, so it's around like 6 or 7 wounds. I would bank on 7 being the average there. And then, you know, I think they're a 14-16 now, so a 7 to waver. Pretty good, but when I roll it up, I only end up doing 4 wounds, which is a little unfortunate. The Chariots miss with all their shots, 16 shots on 6s, and then Mortibrus misses. Actually, no, I think Mortibrus is the one that does the damage, because, again, the Soul Snare only hits like twice. So, yeah, it ends up being only 4 wounds, but then I make up for it by rolling a 10 on the waiver. So, get that waiver. Or maybe they're a 13-15. Whatever it was, I wavered them with 4 wounds. So, I either rolled a 9 or a 10. And that was pretty good. Otherwise, we're moving on to turn 2. Well, here's an action shot. And then we got turn 2. So, turn 2. This, again, it's getting... It's a fun few turns when you've got these hyper elite armies, but neither of us are super super fast. So we're not going to Alpha Strike, right? My opponent has much more Alpha Strike potential than I do, but my units are probably gonna just ignore it unless he can get more than 2 into me. So, or into a flank maybe. So he just moves forward. The Placoderms move onto the other gold token to pick it up. It's worth 2. Then we've got this Kraken moving into the woods. It's a pretty smart move. Originally I thought it should be more like this, that way it can threaten my birds, because right now the birds can just fly right by it, right? But I think this is a smarter move, because I can always take one of these giants, just move 7 and then go for the long surge, and I have Strider. So a giant into the flank, right, is 6 plus d6 attacks times 2. I ignore the cover and I'm not ensnared. That's not great. So yeah, probably a better move there. And then if you face the other way, obviously mummies can go do that, so there's no reason to do that. Ector ends up moving a little bit more. So right now my opponent has placed Ector there, and we talk about it during the game, and I'm like, there's no reason for Ector to be where you've put him, right? Because Ector really... Well, there's one, which is Ector can currently shoot, right? So that's as far as Ector can move with his base movement. So wanting to get that Kraken mod going, right? But you're not blocking the flank charge onto the Placoderms here, right? So these Revenants, not only do they have a flank charge, they don't even have to surge. This is just a flank charge. So in the end, Ector moves forward a little bit and ends up right about here, I want to say, is where Ector goes. Anyway, just blocking that flank charge. I actually can't get around Ector with the Revenants because with my speed 5 and then how meaty this horde is, I'm going to be unable to make it to the flank of this unless I kill Ector and get the overrun. But Phalanx, Ensnare, I'd be in the terrain, and Def 6, it's not going to happen. So anyway, then we've got the Knucker moving forward just to protect the Siren. It's an interesting idea. The Knucker does a much, well, protecting the Siren is one of the things. The better thing is that it's, again, making it so I can't get too many units onto these placoderms because they're very wide and I have a lot of stuff over here that could charge it, right? So pretty good move. The Worm Riders back here are just playing backfield. The other Worm Riders are over here along with the Trident King. They're both facing towards the table, so they can come in if they want to. And then we've got the second Kraken, again, just facing directly forward. It's protected from a flank charge because I can't, so again, I can't surge past any of this stuff. The Knucker is playing that linebacker role right now pretty well. So that's it. With the shooting, I think my opponent goes for a drain, or no, I think the drain ends up being out of range. So, and there's no wind blast opportunity right now because of this height 2 hill. Ector ended up running, so there's no shooting there. The Heart Piercers are wavered, so they just roll back, and that's it. Oh, there's one other thing. See, the Knucker in the top right is no longer there. That Knucker ran around to grab the 1 point token over here, and unfortunately, because he didn't move as far forward as he could, he ends up missing it. So he'll have to grab it next turn at best, which gives me one free turn to just sort of run off with mummies. So yeah, that definitely plays to my favor. And let's move forward into turn 2 for Empire of Dust. And this is how it goes. So Empire of Dust, if I roll a picture back here, that's going to happen a lot in this game. I have a lot of things I can do. Keep in mind that Ector is right here, so I have a couple moves I can do. I can get really aggressive and just go, I win the game, right? If I want. Or I can play passively and just try to scalpel out some stuff, but if I scalpel anything, I'm going to get into a peace trade war with Trident Realm, and I think they're going to win. So that's the issue. And I don't mean win the scenario, I mean win the peace trade. So, like, I can easily kill this Knucker. It's very easy. All my units are in its front, but Shovik could just walk forward, pivot, and get that surge into the flank very easily. But after I do that, right, I'm gonna get charged by, I'm gonna get either flanked by placoderms, or flanked by the Trident King and Worms, or flanked by Worms and Kraken, right? So it's not great for a 350 point model for that to happen. And if I fail to kill the Knucker, it's the same thing, but just worse. I get rear charged and flank charged. So, yeah, not best. But I can get some pretty hefty damage going on, and let's go back onto my turn picture here. So this is what I end up doing. First off, these chariots were in the flank of Ector's location, where you can't even see him now, but he's right there. But so Ector, I'm in his flank. I can just charge with the chariots, and I choose to do that first, right? So, or no, I charge with the... Yeah, I charge with the chariots first, yes. And the plan is I hit Ector in the flank. I've got 16 attacks. I don't lose my Thunderous from his stupid Phalanx, and then I don't have the Ensnare. So it's 4+ to hit, 4+ to wound base. I also do have a Bane Chant in Mortibrus, right? So I can get that to 3+ to wound. So that's pretty good. And then I decide to take my Revenants here and move forward, and I go, well, this is a terrible charge, right? A terrible surge, but I do want my Revenants up the field a little bit. So I move them, so this ends up being I think it's a 9-inch surge to make it, which is, if I get a 5 here, I'll end up on this token and be about where I want to be anyway. So I go for that, I'm going to go for that surge. And it also, mostly because I want my Soul Snare to get into the placoderms here with the Drain Life to help me out, which means, and I also I'm getting greedy with the Revenants, and I want them to be in the game already, so I'm going to push them forward. These birds do fly right by the Kraken. You can see the Heart Piercers had moved back. They didn't actually get out of the woods, And I think that's why, part of the reason why my opponent had to set this up on the left flank, or on my left flank here, where just tempting me to win the game, because otherwise I kill these heart piercers for nothing, right? Like, I do not expose myself. So because I've got this drain, I've got this lightning bolt, and I have the chariot still, and I can just go, you don't get to charge me unless you want to charge me with, like, you could be very aggressive, right? But it's the same problem, only then I also kill your units. So it's not the best for my opponent here. Anyway, moving forward, I moved the mummies a little bit over here. Just want them into the game, obviously. I don't think this knucker is relevant, especially it's not even on the loot token yet, and I'm just out of 18 for the charge, so it cannot charge anything. It'll have to grab that loot token. So that's the plan there. Then I've got... and then I have both my giants charge after the chariots, and the idea here, they get blocked by the chariot when they charge in, because Ector is not deep enough in there to make it so the chariots aren't a bit, they're like less than an inch away from these placoderms. So when the giants charge in, they don't block this overrun, right? And I do make a mistake here. I couldn't fit all three. I really wanted to just go, balls to the wall, send both my giants and Shobik all into the placoderms and just wreck them, right? Because then even if my chariots don't make it, that is a lot of attacks for no ensnare and a lot of crushing. But in the end, I decide not to do that, and I think that I make a mistake here with Shobik, which is I backed up, and I think I should have gone for the charge onto this knucker. I didn't do it because when my giants lose, or if they lose, right, when I back up an inch, I won't be able to be charged by the knucker anyway. The knucker can charge this wizard, but who cares? It's going to charge over a fence, whatever. But in the end, I still should have taken Shobik and taken this easy flank, right? Just taken the Peace War, gone, you have to kill Shobik now. You probably will, but I need to make it so these units are doing nothing but fighting one of my units, right? I can't afford to lose multiples. So, anyway, I back Shobik up, and that is a mistake. That is mistake one of the turn, and then what ends up happening is I go for the surge. I do make the 9-inch surge, which is funny, but not helpful because I'm hitting on 6s, as that's through the terrain and, of course, ensnare. So, yeah, not the best there. The chariots, let's roll a picture forward. So you can see this is the way it ends up, right? So first off, yeah, the revenants go in there. They don't hit. 0 hits. So next up, we've got my chariots, who do end up killing off Ector, mostly due to this Bane Chant from Mortibrus, so that was a good call. My Drain Life totally fails. I get, it's not that hard. It's not that easy to wound the placoderms with Drain, because they're def 6, just period. So I only wound them on 5s. But I go for it. I nail 1 wound, which is not enough. On average, you get 2, so it's not that big of a deal. But if I had spiked there, again, this was a if I spiked there turn, right? 4+ units, man. So the chariots do kill off Ector, and then overrun. Oh, I forgot to mention the drain went on Ector, not on the placoderms, right? So I get Ector, he's gone, and then the chariots overrun into the placoderms. This is actually pretty good. The placoderms do have phalanx, which is annoying. So I'm only wounding them on 5s with the chariots, but still 16 attacks on 4s, and then on 5s I can get around 3 wounds, 2 to 3 wounds there. And then the giants do phenomenally here with their rolls, so I end up getting plus 11 attacks, right? I roll a 5 and a 6, so I've got, 23 attacks, and with 23 attacks with the Crush 3, and then 16 attacks with the Crush 1, right? I end up doing 9 wounds. So yeah, that's a little unfortunate. I think that the placoderms are 2022, meaning that I think on average I do 13-ish wounds with those units, and then if I had managed that 13 wounds, it's a 7 to waver, right? Or a 6 to waver because I have brutal, but I don't manage it. I don't even waver them. So that's super bad, and again, this is why Shobik should have just been used as chaff. I keep talking about this. I used to be a competitive War Machine player, and in War Machine, everything's chaff. It doesn't matter until it's your Warcaster, right? Because you lose the game. in the same, anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is that my philosophy in war games is that everything is chaff until it isn't, right? So if it makes you win the game, everything is, right? And I just didn't throw Shobik away when I should have here. But anyway, I bounce off, and that's bad. Let's see what my opponent does. So turn 3. And it's much worse than I thought. So first off, roll a picture back, or a couple pictures back. I didn't get the waiver here, so they get to charge onto the chariots. This Knucker gets a free charge onto Shobik because I didn't do anything about it. This Kraken, I actually didn't think he had the charge onto the chariots, but apparently he did. Apparently he's got that flank, and it was an easy one too, right? I mean, anyway, I thought I could tank one of these, right? I knew I was going to eat a flank charge. I didn't think it was going to be the Kraken, but I can take that, right? But then not wavering these is bad. So that happens, and then disaster strikes up north. You can see these Snake Riders made it into the flank of my Revenants, and this is what's hard about surging, is that sometimes you just go a number, right? You just go whatever, and because I made that charge, I end up just like, it's just the foot of the skeleton, right? It's an easy 18, right? But it's just 18, and it just sucks because now those Revenants are just a free kill. Because of another mistake, I didn't move, my priest far enough forward, or Mortibrus far enough forward for whatever reason, so they're not even inspired. That's just bad juju there, right? So yeah, the chariots are getting flanked and front by the placoderms. One of my giants is getting flanked by worm riders that I actually saw, but again, I wanted to protect Shobik for whatever reason. So I'm getting flank charged by snakes, and then front charged by a Knucker. The other Knucker, you can see, has grabbed the loot token, is just staring at my mummies. So at least there's that. And then I think the heart piercers, now I know I think they're on 1 wound still. I don't know where their wound die. Maybe it's over there. But anyway, they have decided to just back completely out of the trees. They're not in this game. They can shoot at one of my giants, but it's going to be moving in cover. So on 6s, right? Who cares? So moving forward, and here, here's the fun shot, and end a turn, everything dies. So that's not to be, well, I mean, Shobik doesn't die, but that's not unexpected, but it's just a free kill, and I'm sitting here going like, did I just throw this tournament through a like 1/8 of an inch mismeasure and then a misplay with Shobik? Maybe, right? That's what you get for 12 drops. But yeah, so this is real bad. The only thing it looks worse than it is only because there is a bone giant right behind this Kraken. So at least there's that. And we move forward to Empire of Dust turn 3. Empire of Dust turn 3, let's see what I can do. I decide to drop the loot token first that I had and go with these birds into the side of the heart piercers. In retrospect, this is also a mistake. Not because of what you might be thinking of. I actually am trying to play hyper aggressively now because I need to be able to I need kills right now, and I need some of these units gone to make it so my opponent has to react to me again, right? I need that pendulum swing a little bit. But I didn't realize, I mean, these models are pretty big, but I'm not going to blame it on that. I just didn't measure it beforehand in the same way that I didn't measuring every inch that Revenant can move, and then everything that can charge it and wear. That's mind-numbing. Don't do that. But the birds end up charging to the flank and are hindered because they just barely touch this wood, and I would never do that if I knew that going in. I would have just taken the loot token, gone over here, and told them to shoot at me, right? Since they're -1 to hit when they move because they're not in the formation, so they're going to be hitting me on 5s, and I'll take that, right? But I don't, so that's kind of a dumb charge. Elsewhere, I go for some risky plays, which is if we roll over here, you can see Shobik is where this play base is, because this hill, this giant octopus on the hill, that was some daunting stuff because that model is not light. But anyway, you can see Shobik just barely has the line for the Siren there and can see her. And she's facing like this, which is the only time facing matters really on individuals. It's when they've got ensnare. So, yep, Shobik goes into the flank of the Siren, which turns off that ensnare. going for an overrun onto the Kraken. My giant that is behind the Kraken turns to face like so, with my Cursed Priest here just setting up the surge. I think it's a 3-inch surge that I need. And then I set these mummies up for a surge into the rear of the placoderms. Hopefully I can do it in one. It is a 6-inch surge, so it is hard, but I did get a 9-inch surge to kill myself, so maybe I can get a 6 to save it, because if I get it in one surge, Mortibris can then give them +1 crushing. I can Bane Chant them, which is a big deal, pretty much only against placoderms because they're def 6. So well, and then I move the Soul Snare just out of range of the Knucker. Even if it drops the token, it can't charge me. And then I'm also within 12 or 18 inches to just choose whatever target I want, right? So let's see how it goes. It goes pretty well. So I'm not in the game yet. Like it's still not going great, but it's at least not terrible. So first off, we've got Shobik kills the Siren, overruns into the Kraken. I do get this surge of Giant into the rear of that Kraken. Shobik is in the front, so I am ensnared. But together we get it to double ones and kill it off. Shobik reforms facing like so. And it's mostly because I want to dodge this Knucker charge if possible. I don't want to give him any charge whatsoever. So I turn like that, and I'm still facing snakes and the Trident King with nothing possible. Like, he cannot flank charge me, right? These guys can't see. So anyway, I'm protected there. I think this giant I really wanted to face like this, obviously, but I can't take a flank charge from Snake Riders and from a Trident King. That's too much. So instead we turn to face the snakes and just see what happens. The mummies here, it's a little interesting with the mummies because I do kill off the placoderms, but they're still in a lot of danger here. So I do manage to finagle out getting both the snakes into the front, and then the Trident King is not on the hill while my giant is. So the giant's height 6, so it's just perfectly well, I guess the Trident King's only height 3, so the giant would block it anyway. But anyway, the giant is blocking line of sight to the mummies, right? So I've got worms in the front, and a Kraken in the flank, right? I was going to eat a flank no matter what. I got to choose the unit. I chose the Kraken, especially because I don't think if the Kraken charges me in the flank, because that's a 75 by 75, which is one of the options you can do. Well, this is an 80 mil, right? So anyway, that doesn't matter. But I think this giant makes it so the double front charge doesn't work, but we'll see soon enough. You can see my birds did 1 wound, so they turned off their shooting, but whatever. And these mummies are just moving forward to help out. And we move on to turn 4. So turn 4, well, it moves how you think it would. First off, Shobik gets ignored because he's a sad bear. The giant gets charged in the front by the Worm Riders. The Trident King goes after my middle Cursed High Priest, and this was a bit of a gamble as well. I've got all my priests in a row, but they're very unlikely to die, right, to enable that overrun. And I have a choice of I want this priest to be charged if any of the 3 get charged, right? Well, Mortibris would be best, but Mortibris was too far. So I don't want this one charged, right? That'd be bad. So I make it so the Banner the Griffin priest is over 6, right? So the overrun will not get him into a fresh character. This one will, right? It's a long one. I think it's a 4 or 5 to make it to Mortibris. But even if he does, Mortibris is a 15, 17. I'm not worried about it. And this priest, because it's not. Oh, yeah. It is over 6 because adding the base, but this is 6 inches, right, between the 2 models. So my priest is currently a -14, I want to say, -13 base plus rally 1. So we've got that going because my mummies really need that rally. So the mummies are getting front charged by Worm Riders and then flank charged by an octopus, by a Kraken. This is exactly when I want that 4+ pendulum to swing against my opponent instead of against me here, because the Kraken, yeah, it's a 4+ to hit and then 3+ to wound. It could easily, decimate me or do nothing, right? So I'm hoping for nothing, obviously. There are no shots for my opponent because the only thing with a gun... Well, there are 2 guns, but this was disordered and the Trident King charged. So none there. This Knucker just decides to pin in the Soul Snare with the other Knucker. So it's moved forward. It's 5 speed. And let's see what happens. Yeah, this combat right here, this is an interesting one because I do have the 2-point loot token. So right now I'm tied with my opponent, but the mummies are dash 19, right? So we've got 18 attacks to the front. So we've got 12 hits and then 4 off that. So 8 wounds. And then the Kraken gets 15 hits and then 10 wounds. So that's double ones already on average. I really need this Kraken to just shit the bed. But it doesn't. In fact, that Kraken alone does 19 wounds. So, or 17 wounds at least. We don't get to the Worm Riders. Oh, the Worm Riders have elite, so it's actually even worse than that. But anyway, the Kraken does it alone. The other Worm Riders thankfully do not manage to kill off my giant. That's a godsend. And in fact, nothing else dies. The priest gets disordered, obviously, but isn't dead. And the scavengers aren't even wavered. They are wounded though, so they are disordered. And we move forward to turn 4 for the Empire of Dust. So turn 4 Empire of Dust. If we look here, these mummies do have a flank charge onto these Worm Riders. This is when I go, I think I can turn the game around, right? I think I can win now because both of us have, again, we have so few drops that anything that dies is a big blow, right? So right now the Kraken picked up all the tokens. So the Kraken picked up my 2, my 2-pointer from the mummies and then landed on a token. So the Kraken has 3 and then the Knucker over here has 1. So I go, okay, I'll get the Kraken eventually, but not for right now. I decide to take the flank charge with my mummies. That seems like easy prey or easy meat onto these Worm Riders. I've got 24 attacks with Vicious and Elite, and I hit on 4s, wound on 2s. So I decide that I need big moves right now. So the giant joins with Shobik into these Worm Riders. In retrospect, I think I should have gone for the surge onto the giant here and charged into these worms, but it's just a better play because the mummies being freed up to kill a Kraken or the Trident King is better than Shobik being free because Shobik is already free, right? Shobik will be here, so he can see everything already. But anyway, I don't do that. They both go in there. And then I move all my characters a little bit over here. So let's see how that turns out. Yeah, I do kill off these Worm Riders, which is great. But these Worm Riders, my mummies go in, they do 11 wounds. I need a 6 to kill, and I can't roll it. So, yeah, I failed to roll that 6. That's big. Unfortunately, I mean, it's what you get with these like hyper elite lists, where you go in and if like hyper elite on hyper elite is fun, right? But it really comes down to who got the quote bad roll, and I've had 2 of them so far, while my opponent is rolling relatively average, right? Like I said, that Kraken into the side of the mummies went, super skew up, but that didn't matter, right? Because we hadn't even got to the Worm Riders yet. So yeah, unfortunately, I've got the 2 low rolls so far. And that's the way it goes. But I did move my Soul Snare, and I'm trying to correct a mistake because turn 3, the Soul Snare went for an extra drain to make sure that those mummies that rear charged the placoderms could get the damage through. But those placoderms were sitting on, let's see, I need a 7 to waver them, so they were on 12 wounds because I had Brutal. Right? So 12 wounds, the mummies have 36 attacks on 5s and 4s? No, 5s and 3s because of the Bane Chant. So with Vicious and Elite, I'm not worried about that. And what I should have done is shot at the Knucker over here just to make it so my opponent has to worry about the loot tokens again, right? He doesn't have a free one then. But I do an interesting, or I think a pretty good move here, which is the 2 Knuckers have me pinned, but they have to choose which one's going to fight me, right? So I run away from the one that doesn't have to drop a loot token. I'm out of 18, and then I try to just kill the other one, right? So I do have the capacity to do so, and I also have what's his face, Mortibris to fire a shot in there as well, right? but Mort misses. Or maybe he went for a heal on my giant or something. But anyway, because I rolled the Soul Snare first, it does like 4 wounds, which is okay. It's around the average there. And I go, well, I didn't spike it, so Mortibrus's Lightning Bolt 4 probably won't do anything. And it didn't, because I didn't roll high enough to kill it, even if all 4 Lightning Bolts hadn't wounded it. So that's the plan. And and then my birds went back into these friggin' heart piercers and did like a wound or 2 to them, which it's gonna be funny because they've got regen 4+, and I've got life leech 2, so we're just sort of ramming into each other. It's like high school all over again. Turn 5. Yeah, I don't have a lot of pictures because we are running very low on time now. This is the end of Empire of Dust turn 5. So what happens in the Trident Realm turn is, if we roll some pictures back, these Snake Riders have an easy counter charge onto my mummies, so they take it. I don't think the Kraken can charge anything. Oh, well, I mean, it could charge the Soul Snare, but whatever. The Trident King goes into the Soul Snare, right? So that's a dead Soul Snare. And the Kraken just moves over here to grab this token, right? The Heart Piercers go back into the birds, and this Knucker moves forward just to threaten things a little bit better. And we move to my turn 5. So my turn 5, I send most of my stuff in to fight the Worm Riders that were here. So Shobik goes into the flank, the mummies go into the front, and then the giant, I think, also goes into the flank. And, you know, we wreck them. I could have gone for a charge onto this Knucker. And again, I think I should have, in retrospect, with at least one of these units, because I did have a surge, unless I needed a surge to get one of these charges. I'm not exactly sure. I actually probably did on the giant. But anyway, I should have gone for the Knucker with at least one of them, because we're running out of turns and I need to make sure that my opponent has no tools with which to work, right? So anyway, I don't. And then right, that's right. My mummies end up taking a ton of wounds from those Worm Riders. That's what's happening. And then I regen some of them. I regen a fair amount, but I've got too many units that can charge me right now. So instead, I just slam my mummies with heal. And even then, I don't roll that well in the heal. So, I do something good, I think, which is again, the Kraken ran over here to grab a token. I have a priest just run out in front of him, because so the Kraken, the worst possible thing that can happen is that the Kraken runs 14 inches this way, because it has Strider, so it's not going to get over that, or it doesn't have flight, so it can't get over this. So it'll run to the edge of this obstacle, right? But that's the worst thing that can happen, because it's way out of range. It would be some long bomb surges, and then my opponent has 3 units all facing in decent directions, one of which with a ranged attack to deal with my surgers, just to disorder them or kill them. So yeah, not the best. So instead I just run a priest in front and go, well, if you kill it, you can go a total of 7, right? I'm an inch away and then overrun 6 inches. So it'll be just like a move. If you go this way, the giant here is facing like this, right? Which is it's a skeleton, because this hill is so terrible. But yeah, so I will get a pretty easy surge there with a double surge at least. Maybe even a charge. No, it's probably just a normal charge. So yeah, that's not the best move. And if you come this way, that's suicide. So that's the plan. Let's see what turn 6 holds. Oh, looks like I ran out of pictures. So turn 6 looks like this. And again, yeah, it has nothing to do with what happened here. It's that my opponent was, at the start of turn 6, had, I think, 2 minutes total on the clock, and I have like 11. So my opponent takes the charge onto this Lich Priest with the Kraken going for the kill and the overrun, right? The Knucker here, I believe, drops its loot token, charges into this giant, right, to gum that up, and that's a good move, while the Trident King goes into the front of the mummies and the flank with the Knucker here. And again, should have killed off this Knucker already. So the mummies end up taking some wounds. They take a ton of wounds. My opponent actually spikes the dice here, which is not great. The other spike, like I said, the Kraken spike is whatever, but my opponent does get a dice spike here. Kills the mummies rather easily. Well, kills them exactly on the reroll, but with a 19. I think he needed a 4, so it wasn't that big of a roll. Thankfully, they died, though, because with the mummies gone, right, the Trident King is right about here, right, and then this Knucker is right about here, and the other Knucker is right here. So there's a gap right through here that I can get to this Kraken, and that's what we're gonna do. So mummies are dead. I go, well, fuck everything else on the table. We're going for that Kraken. I've got a normal charge with Shobik just right on into it. And then this Knucker is in front of me, but my my giant can just crab walk to the left and still just barely hit the Kraken. And it's not the corner to corner nonsense. I just hit it and slide over, right? So I have that going for me. The plan here, the Kraken now has, I think, 5 points because it's the 2 2s and the 1 and 1 1, right? So I'm just going to go into the Kraken, go for the kill. I've got d6 plus 6 attacks on 5s, and I've got 10 attacks on 3s. The Kraken is unwounded, so I think it's a 17, 19, but I have brutal. And I go into it, and I don't get the kill. I, in fact, flub the dice pretty hard here. They're not, it's not like what I've been talking about before, where I flubbed, like flubbed a 6 or flubbed a 5. But yeah, Shobik does okay, does like 4 or 5 wounds, and then the giant just, does what a giant does because it's got random attacks and only hits twice and does 2 wounds and whatever. But I still have a chance because on turn 7, my opponent is, if we get a turn 7, right, the Kraken is exactly where you see it. This priest is still alive, so the Kraken is trapped here. If it tries to go to the side again, it'll just get flank charged, and that's a nightmare. Or if it goes this way, same thing. The Trident King is right here, right? These mummies are dead. And after the reform, my opponent only had 45 seconds, so he just hit his clock, right? And so nothing is reformed. So the Trident King is here, the Knucker is here, and then this last Knucker is like this, right? So the point is that only this Knucker has line of sight on any of the stuff with the Kraken. So the Knucker here can go for a flank charge onto Shobik along with a front charge from the Kraken. Shobik is completely undamaged. So a flank charge, right, that's 12 attacks on 3s, right? So on average you get around 8 hits, and then wounding defense 6, it's thunder 3, right? So you get 5-ish wounds, and then the Kraken 7 or 8 hits. Let's go with 8 just to make it easy, and then crush 2, so 4 more wounds. So you get 9 wounds. You need a 9 twice to kill me. Not going to happen, or not likely to happen. So yeah, and then on my turn 7, I do the exact same thing I just talked about, which is if you charge either of these units, I can get a flank charge. I can get a I can't get a, can I? No, I cannot get a flank charge. Not unless I do the corner-to-corner thing. But the Kraken had taken 7 wounds already, and a second bevy of fight from the 2 characters. I also do have that wizard that charged. It didn't do anything, but I do have a free wizard attack as well. So it's sitting on 7 wounds. As long as I can do another like 7-ish wounds, I mean, that's a 4 to kill it, and then I get all 5 tokens, right? They're all mine now. So, but unfortunately, we don't roll a turn 7, and the game ends there with my opponent having 45 seconds on. Oh, that's the other thing. He has to kill those units with 45 seconds, with a bunch of 4+ to hit stuff. Not great. So anyway, the game ends there with my opponent getting a pretty decided victory. It is a 16-5 game because I do win on attrition in the end. But yeah, good game. I had a great time. I wish I hadn't made those mistakes I made, or the dice had gone in my favor. But yeah, pretty cool anyway. Let's move on to game 5. So final game, and it's against Ratkin. So like I said before, Trident Realm is just the matchup I don't want, right? Because of the ensnare, but Ratkin can be very problematic if the scenario is right for them with my army, right? Because I just don't have that much ranged threat. I'm more about killing elite stuff with my ranged, and then I'm a scalpel, and then I just take your hammers charge, and then I do surge shenanigans and get around you, right? Ratkin is harder to do that with. And here's my opponent's Ratkin army. So first off, we have the Turbo Runners formation, which involves a Night Terror. This one has the Blade of Slashing, and 2 hordes of Tunnel Runners. In this formation, I believe the Tunnel Runners gain Fury. The Night Runner might also gain Fury, but the Night Runner definitely gains Rally 1. Then we have a horde of Blight, 2 troops of Scurriers, both of whom have light crossbows. Then a horde of Shock troops with the Caterpillar Potion, 2 hordes of Brutes, 2 regiments of Vermintide, a troop of Hackpaws, 2 Swarm Criers, 1 with the Loot, and 3 weapon teams, all of whom have the Storm of Lead upgrade. I am 15 points off in this list. I'm sure it's, a Brew of Courage or a Brew of Speed somewhere, but I don't remember. So anyway, let's move forward. And this is going to be a weird one because I was a little tired of taking pictures, wearing on you. So yeah, I forgot to take a picture of turn 1, so we're just going to have to go through it here. Let's go through the terrain. So first off, we have in the bottom right a big old height flat piece of terrain with a height 1 obstacle, kind of like a 7 attached to it. Then right next to it, we have a pretty big impassable, right? And again, it's a height 4 impassable. The whole base is impassable, so it's rough. Over here, we have a height 6 forest. To the left of that, we have a height flat area terrain. Then we have a height 2 hill. Right below that, we have a height 6 forest with a height 1 obstacle attached to it. And then finally, we have a height 2 hill right in the middle of the field. Now, there is another really big height 6, I want to say. It's a bigger no, they were all standardized. So it's a height 4 impassable, but again, the base is very large over here. It's not as large as I just drew, but it is large. Over on the left side of the table. And let's go over the scenario, which was Dominate. And Dominate is one of those scenarios you don't want to see Ratkin in, at least not with Empire of Dust. So yeah, Dominate is a scenario where starting in the center of the field, you draw out a 12-inch radius, and at the end of the game, if the majority of your unit is in that 12-inch radius, you add their unit strength. The army with the highest unit strength wins. So if you might have noticed, this Ratkin list has a few more drops than me, and almost all of them are unit strength. So I think this Ratkin list has 28 unit strength, something like that, while I have 3, 6, 8, 10, 13, 14 unit strength, so literally double my unit strength. Which is, that's gonna be rough. But and on top of it, it also makes it like I don't think Ratkin are a bad matchup for me, but I do need to make them come over here, right? Like I want to be playing any scenario where I'm protecting loot counters or protecting my side of the table, and I just need to move forward. So like control would be fine, even though that's also a pretty good Ratkin scenario. But yeah, any of these ones where I have to move into the center, because otherwise Ratkin will force me out, right? Because if he gets first turn, moves 12, I can't charge yet with anything that isn't the giant or the chariots, and I'm probably not going to take out any of the stuff if it's screened with hordes or screened with his chaff. And then next turn just moves into me, so just forces me out and pushes this into a grind in my table side, with him just going at the end of the game, I just need to have half my units alive and you can't win. So oof, that's bad. Fortunately for me, I do at least win the roll to go first, and everything moves forward. So this is turn 1. Turn 1, I move my scavengers off. Oh, we didn't talk about the Empire of Dust deployment, but it's pretty easy. We've got the Soul Snare right in front of them, the scavengers. We've got Shobik with the double giant next to him. Then we've got both regiments of mummies right there in the middle, with the left priest being the Banner of the Griffin one with heal 4, the middle one being Mortibris. And then off here to the right, we've got the Revenants with the last Curse High Priest with heal 4 behind him. And then we've got the Chariots just sitting in this big old piece of rough terrain. So anyway, in my turn on the left, I fly the Scavengers into the woods, because it would be great if I could also get Mortibris's bubble onto them, but it's just not necessary right now. Not with the Storm of Lead. Well, I guess it would have been better. This was a bad play by me. Mortibris should have run over here, because I'm not going to lightning bolt anything this turn. So yeah, I should have done that, but I am in the forest to make it so the scurriers are hitting me on 5s, and then I fly over and attack them, right? I move all the giants forward just to, start dominating the field. This barrier is good for them, so if the rats move forward, I will just sit still. If they don't, I will rush forward, right? The Soul Snare does not get a turn to shoot, which again is why I don't like going first with this, but if it's dominate, I kind of have to. So Soul Snare moves into the woods just to get ready to mess with those scurriers real quick before rotating into the center. And my center just keeps its battle line. With my chariots, so I know I moved the chariots 6 inches forward, right? Because this big orange thing, that is a 6-inch widget. So I moved it 6 deliberately because it makes it so the weapon teams can't shoot you. But apparently, when I decided to pivot the unit towards the center, I moved them just slightly forward. So we'll see what that does. And Ratkin turn 1. So Ratkin turn 1. Looks like so. The Ratkin, they move forward. It's a little more pensive than I would be. But again, my opponent knows that, I'm mostly speed 5, so there's no reason to really advance just yet. And yeah, we've got the 3 weapon teams moving forward into the forest. It's not that big of a deal to have cover against me, but why not? And all of them are in range of my chariots because I just slightly overmeasured it. And not cheating overmeasured. I mean, chariots are speed 8. I just messed up where I placed them. So I'm going to eat 3 storms of lead. That's not great. The Hackpaws move forward to protect the tunnel runners just in case the chariots want to get cheeky, but they are in rough terrain, so I don't imagine they will. And then everything else just sort of keeps the line with the scurriers taking this hill. In my opponent's shooting phase, the scurriers all shoot into the scavengers. The scavengers take 2 wounds, but then Iron Resolve 1 back because they are not wavered, thankfully. And then my opponent goes for the Storm of Lead, gets 11 wounds on the chariots, which is only 1 above average, but still, that is that's not pretty. We'll move into turn 2 with some wounds on us. So turn 2. Turn 2, I have to adjust my strategy a little bit because I've already made a mistake in the game. So the scavengers do get their charge into the scurriers on the left. The Soul Snare goes for the other scurriers. So scurriers are an 8-10, I want to say, nerve. They're currently a 9-11 because the brutes are nearby. But with 5 wounds, it's a 4 to waver. That's all I'm really looking for. The scurriers, my scavengers, I don't expect to waver these scurriers on the hill, but I will turn off their bows and I can take 1 unit, right? If they charge me, I win that grindfest due to the life leech too. So, and the natively higher nerve, because scavengers are a 10-12. So anyway, in the middle, I move with... So Shobik is just out of charge range of any of this stuff, along with this giant. This giant, however, has moved into charge range of the Vermintide and nothing else, right? So the vermin can come into me, whatever, doesn't matter. The center just moves forward with my Revenants getting ready for the death of my chariots because I stupidly allowed them to take 11 wounds. So yeah, they are now the second line. The chariots do decide to just move forward and sacrifice themselves this turn to keep this side of the field out of the bubble. They go for a double move here where I get to shoot at the vermin. Do I shoot at the Vermintide or do I go for some 6s on this ASB? I'm not sure which. It doesn't matter. Either way, they don't hit. And then I have 2 priests here to cast... well, no, I think I go with Mortibris and this priest. So got heal 9 onto my chariots just to get them a little healthier. And I heal like 2. It doesn't matter. And then I go for the surge, and it's like a 3... Let's see, they were 12 inches away, I moved 8, so they're 4 inches. I think they're at their max range, yeah. So it's a 4-inch surge, and I do get it, and I get my choice of weapon team to fight, and Myrtilate with my treble attacks. So at the end of the turn, I do kill it. I go after the middle weapon team, kill it off, and then I back up D3. I think I back up the full 3, which is perfect with me. And that's what it looks like. So moving into turn 2 for the Ratkin. And it looks... Oh, wait, I forgot to talk about this. So over here, let's talk about how these combats go. First off, the scavengers, they do 1 wound, which is, I mean, it's below average, but only by 1. It depends on whether you mean number or percentage, right? It's 50% below average, but it's only off by 1 wound. So I do fail that by 1. It is unfortunate because, again, I do believe they are 8-10, and these ones are not in the rally bubble. So yeah, I do fail that, and I don't waver them. And then my Soul Snare fires, hits 5 times, and rolls 4 ones to wound, because Soul Snare is done with this tournament, I guess. So I do 1 wound to the other Scurriers, and that is nothing. So they are not wavered. And let's move on to turn 2 for the Ratties. So turn 2 for the Rats, you've got, this is actually the end of turn 2 because, again, we're on clock and it's a little difficult to get all the pictures out. But the Scurriers both go into my Scavengers, 1 in the flank, and we don't even get to the front one. The flanks get them over 12 wounds, so that's unfortunate with 14 attacks. Or no, they get them to 10 wounds with 14 attacks. So they're dead. Then the Vermintide here, I can't remember if they charged my giant or just moved in front of it. Either way, they don't do any damage and are just blocking my path, while everything over here just murders those chariots, which is to be expected. The chariots do not live. The weapon teams have used their nimble to move forward. 1 has shot at these mummies. They do have stealth due to Mortibris, and so they've done, it looks like 4 damage, which is a lot, but and then we've got the Revenants taking 2 or 3 damage from the other weapon team. So I mean, that's probably a little much, but it's not that big of a deal, not with the amount of heal I have. So anyway, moving on to, well, there's the that's just where chariots were once. Moving on to turn 3. So turn 3, it is an interesting turn. So again, all my plans for turn 2 failed, right? I really only had 2 plans, right? Which was the for the left side of the field. So I've got to rectify that. First off, the Soul Snare backs up to be out of charge range of Scurriers and just goes for, well, you know, I'm not going to fail 2 turns in a row, so goes for the kill there. I send both the Giant into this Vermintide because they can't do anything else anyway. I could have also sent Mummies, but that would have been very dumb, so I don't do that. And then I take Shobik and I just do a crab walk. So Shobik crabs over there. I've got an 8-inch surge to make it into these brutes, and I have 2 surge, right? So I've got surge 20 to go 8 inches, and that's sort of my plan. I don't expect to kill these brutes, but the brutes are very unlikely to be able to kill me. And after I bounce off them, these blight can combo charge, or the blight can combo charge me, assuming these scurriers are dead or move, right? The blight can combo charge, but they're in the front, right, along with the brutes. So, and these are hindered, right? So they've got 30 attacks on 5s and then 6s, so 10 hits, 2 wounds. The brutes have 18 attacks, that's 9 hits, 5 wounds, right? So 7 wounds, that's an 11 twice to kill, or no, a 10 twice because they've got brutal. I'll bet on that. And that's fine with me, right? I'm also over here, right, which is where I want to be on the table right now, so I can start grinding through these brutes. And if the blight do that, they're opening a flank charge for mummies and front charge from giants and all that goodness. Otherwise, I've got these 2 on surge duty, and I've got 1 wizard on heal duty for the revenants because they are in the most danger, which you might have noticed with all these tunnel runners and nonsense coming at me. So that is where we go. I miss all my heal because, you know, heal's dumb. And that's about it. Let's see how the combats go. Oh no, I have the Soul Snare. So the Soul Snare shoots at these Scurriers, and we'll see that in a second. Yep, so the Soul Snare wounds 3 times, which is a little below average, significantly below average if you count both turns, but whatever. And then I also roll below average on the dice to break them, so I roll below average on that, and they're not even wavered. So, poo-poo. I have my Shobik, and I missed this charge by 1 inch, so Shobik is just sitting there. Goes 7 inches. That's bad. I try to save Shobik by moving my giants. I need one of these giants to go 5 inches. They both go 3, which is the worst thing well, it's not the worst thing they can do. It's pretty bad though. Like, I want them to not be not be in a line. That's bad. I want them to go 5. They didn't do that. And I want them to go 2 probably. Like 1 or 2. If they're not going to go 5 or 6, I don't want 3 or 4. That's the worst. And then, like, I think literally the worst thing that could happen is that they both go 4. But this is the second worst, I want to say. So that's that. And we'll see how the rats do on turn 3. So turn 3 rats, they've all come in, so at least we're fighting. We've got the Brutes and the Blight in Shobik. So the Brutes have the front, the Blights have the flank. The Blight have 60 attacks, but it is on 5, so on average that's 20 hits. The Shock Troops get an easy charge into my Giant because it went forward instead of what I wanted to do with it. But whatever, I mean, it's not that bad. It's not that bad of a deal. It's only a front charge. There is a loot right there, so could get that Crush 2 going. That would be bad. And then we've got the weapon teams moving forward to protect the flanks. Always a good move. This has been a pretty, like, by the book Skaven play, I would say. No mistakes. No mistakes I can see just yet. So I do another mistake, which is I get out my proxy bases for my opponent because all our models are just bumping together to figure out how many units can charge these Revenants. And I mess it up because you can see this was supposed to be Tunnel Runners, and Tunnel Runners are an additional 50 mil. That's a little big, but 50 mil wider than the one I got out. So yeah, I allow a third unit to charge me, even though only 2 would technically fit because the third one would be a corner-to-corner charge, which is not legal. Yeah, I mean that one at least when I make mistakes, right? That's something I can improve upon versus dice. So that's always good. The Hack Paws just run off into the difficult terrain here, just looking down my wizard line along with, I think the Night Runner's right there. Night Terror, that's what it's called. So the Night Terror is right there, spreading its Inspire bubble, because this Inspire is catching these units, so out to the weapon teams, all this, and then the Night Runner and Night Terror catches these. The Hack Paws are uninspired. And then these are inspired. The inspiring is somewhere over here for the other side. But anyway, that's the plan. Let's see how it goes. So it doesn't go too well. Everything's blue dialed, but not dead. So both the both these Scurriers had moved forward to get some shots onto the Soul Snare, but stealthy and in cover is a bitch, so they do 0 wounds. You can see Shobik basically takes nothing, and you know, it's not. So what is that? Shobik on average takes like 8 wounds from the Blight, and then like 7. Yeah, so Shobik is dead on average and takes like 3 wounds. So that failed surge comes back to bite my opponent here, because now the Blight are just staring down some giants, especially because first off, this loot fails, so it's only Crush 1, and 2, they don't roll that hot to begin with, and they do like 6 wounds to that giant, which Iron Resolves back down, so not the best. Both the weapon teams open fire onto these mummies who do have stealth. It looks like the mummies end up at 3 wounds, so that's whatever. And then in this combat, my opponent does 12 wounds, that is good, but it is a boxcar to kill, so meh. But again, that's 24 extra attacks I didn't need to take. Granted, they were on 5s because he charged over a fence, so 25 attacks on 5s and 4s. But I should have been protected for another turn or so from eating a third unit. Especially when you're a grind army, it's always important to get that stuff straight. So moving on to turn 4. Turn 4, well, Empire Dust is now doing what they actually want to do, which is charging stuff in the flank. So we get Shobik goes into the front of the Brutes because I want Shobik over here a little bit, and I don't think... So here's the thing, if Shobik and this giant fail to kill these Blight, right, I don't want to take a flank charge from the Brutes, they'll kill me. So we're not doing that. The giant goes into the flank of the blight because seems solid. This giant and these mummies go into the shock troops, and that is the one I'm really gunning for, while this unit of mummies goes into one of the weapon teams. I hide a priest between my two units so it can't be charged. I can't be charged by anything out here. And then I take my revenants here and go into the center unit. Now again, there should not be this unit, should not be here. So when I do this charge, I could have even made it better by charging in and running a priest over here later, right? Because these night runners probably would have moved around. Well, they wouldn't have been able to get a flank, but anyway, I digress. Yeah, I moved there. And I'm looking to get some heal, obviously, with my casters this turn. So unfortunately, I moved I wanted my banner to be over here by the revenants, but I couldn't quite get it to work because I needed to have that heal right now. I couldn't move the full 5 and get within 6 and still help enough of this. And I also really need to be healing Shobik, not this side. My right flank is already collapsing. I need to win the left, right? So we're gonna go for that. My war engine, what is this thing called? The soul snare moves. Only one scurrier can charge me. It's going to be hitting on 6s because they don't have Pathfinder, but they do treble their attacks, so they've got 21 attacks. But you do what you do, and we're going to go for the shock troops with our drain to get some heal going. And yeah, let's get into the shooting. So first off, which you might suspect, this does nothing. It gets like 2 or 3 wounds through, so it's not nothing, right? It's doing fine. It's just not. I'm on my back foot, and it's just every turn rolling on the low end of the spectrum today. Yesterday, it was insane. So it's just balancing out. Let's see, with the other shooting, I've got the heal from the other 3 casters. They do all right. Again, these ones go for Shobik. I don't roll high enough with this. I think I only get 1 heal through with this, so Morgana has to go onto Shobik. And then this priest goes for the revenants. They all do fine, but I'm sitting on so many wounds that it's a little too late, right? But anyway, let's go into the combats. So here's how the combats turn out. I kill none of them. So yeah. First off, we've got Shobik fighting the Blight. I actually did the flank charge first, right? So the giant ends up doing 8 wounds to the Blight, which is okay. On average, the giant, what is it? It's got like 9 or 10 attacks. So it hits 9 or 10 times and then sinks like 7 or 8 wounds, right? So yeah, 8's pretty good. But they are a -23, so that doesn't go anywhere. With my 9, yeah, it's a hot 14. My giant and mummies, this one I really wanted, obviously. The mummies unfortunately flub. The giant does all right. I get these guys pretty high because they were already sitting on 3 wounds, but they are a 22-24 right now, so I just can't punch through them in one go. Needed some solid dice there to get through. And then Shobik does fairly well. I think he does like 6-ish wounds to the Blight, or to the brutes, which isn't the best, but it's not the worst. And then my revenants also do 6-ish wounds. In fact, they do 6 wounds to the tunnel runners right here, and fail to create anything with that. And that's going to be Empire Dust turn 4. Let's go into Ratkin turn 4. So Ratkin turn 4, all the units are wounded. What do they do? So first off, we've got Scurriers going into the Soul Snare. Yeah, that's to be expected, obviously. You got Brutes going into Shobik. Brutes do have Fury, so it's not like, Shobik's fail there is all that bad. The Blight are actually trapped, so I can fall back an inch, right? But no matter how he places this unit, it's going to overhang on everything because it's a horde getting charged in the flank, and then it's just like butt to butt with these units. So it has nowhere to go. So it just sits there. It could have turned this way, I guess, but I mean, that would have been the correct move. So I just assume my opponent did that. Because in this game, we were definitely doing the did you mean to just leave your flank open? And we're like, oh, no. So if he had been like, oh, I wanted to go like this, I would have been like, yeah, go for it. We've got the shock troops going into, I think they went into the giant, because the giant is pretty wounded right now. It's got like 6 wounds on it. So that's a smart move. The weapon team will shoot at these wounded mummies, I believe. And then we've got the triple charge, this is a double charge, plus the Night Terror, going into, so the Night Terror goes into the flank of the Revenants, and then we've got 2 frontal charges here, which again, it should only be 1 frontal charge, but then it would be another flank from this, so whatever. The brutes here go into my mummies on the hill, looking to just cause maximum chaos. And so yeah. Oh, and then we've got the ASB again going for the loot. So let's see how it turns out. Here is the ASB getting the loot off, along with this shooting. Looks like the giant is on 5 wounds. Now I think about it. With the shooting, it does okay against those mummies, but again, they have stealth, so it's hard to, or stealthy, so it's hard to punch through it. Just do a couple wounds. And yeah, here's the first combat, which is my opponent gets the Revenants up to 21 wounds and double ones it. So, yeah, take that. It does give me a second chance at killing those tunnel runners. If I can get those tunnel runners out and then not lose any other units this turn, and then kill the things that, on dice I kill on average, I might still be in this game. But unfortunately, I do lose the giant here. So yeah, shock troops are very deadly. That's not unexpected, especially with Bane Chant going. So they've got 25 attacks on 4+ rerolling ones, and then to wound is a 3+ rerolling ones. And I already had 5 or 6 wounds on me. So yeah, they punch through me, and this is what we end up with. Shobik lives. My soul snare takes 4 wounds, but doesn't really care. Actually, it took 5 wounds, but I've got the Iron Resolve, so ends up not caring about it. And it looks like Mortibus took a couple of wounds here. From what? I don't know. Maybe it's the mummies, because they did get charged. So anyway, those are the wounds. Let's move forward on to turn 5. Turn 5 for the Empire of Dust. So first off, I turn the Soul Snare around because it doesn't matter. So whatever. Ready to fight off these Scurriers. I can't do much else. I'm just looking to block them from getting any charges over here, because this is my whole army, because this unit's dead. I finally get to just go like, well, fuck that right flank. I'm going to give everything here rally 1, right? Mortibus moves into the gap here. Probably, I think Mortibus moved here because I can shoot the weapon team, get a kill that way, just in case I don't need to heal. So yeah, my mummies actually, I think these ones regen all their wounds. One of them regened all their wounds. So it's either this mummy unit or this one, right? Is on nothing. And then we've got Heal 4 goes into Shobik, I believe, here, and does all right. And then I've got a heal here, which I think does go into the Revenants because I can't see anything else. And that also goes all right. The Revenants charge into the Tunnel Runners. My mummies charge into the Brutes. These mummies charge into the shock troops. The giant charges into the flank of the Blight, and Shobik charges into the Brutes. So yeah, this could go well. This could definitely go my way. And here we go. So first off, I double one of these. Oh, it's the Blight. So I roll a double 1. Yep, that's not great. And we move forward, but I do get the other 2 units on the left flank. So I kill off the Brutes with Shobik. Shobik is money. The mummies kill off the shock troops. That's great for me. But I fail again on the right flank. Oh no, that's right. The mummies did not charge the Brutes because I would have gone for a double charge, right? The mummies had to charge a weapon team that's in front of them. So they charge a weapon team and they kill it. Mortibus had moved here to go for a lightning bolt, I think, on the Brutes, just to get some damage out, but didn't get it. Or maybe you went for heal. I don't know what Mortibus did. I know I could have cast a lightning bolt onto these, onto the hack paws, but meh. And moving on to turn 5. For the Ratkin. So turn 5 Ratkin, we've got these 2 units going into I think they're both going into the Revenants along with the Night Terror. And then these mummies get charged by brutes. The last weapon team... No, I must have not charged a weapon team. What the fuck did these mummies do? Did they do 0 wounds to those brutes? Wow. Okay, that's way worse. Oh, no. There it is. I did 6 wounds. It's a little die. So I did charge the brutes. I did 6 wounds to them. So yeah, and the brutes, by the way, have only regened 1 wound each. So I probably actually did 7 wounds to them right there. But anyway, my mummies get charged in the rear by scurriers. It's just barely, like, I thought I had locked this off, right, from 40 mil being able to fit through, but it fits perfectly, you know, every time. So they charge into the rear of the mummies. The mummies do have a fair amount of damage on them, but that is definitely a desperation charge. These double-wand guys can now flank charge. Oh no, they're front. It's a front charge on Shobek. Yeah. So I double on them so they can charge me in the front finally, because they're free this turn. And I think that's about it. This weapon team's gonna shoot at Morgana just right next to him. But oh, and the other hack paws charge into my whatever thing again. They're just gonna fight it forever. The soul snare. And here's what it looks like in the end. So you can see I lose the Revenants. That's to be expected. The mummies take a ton of damage. That is 11 damage. And thankfully, my opponent rolls 1 below average here. Or not 1 below average, 1 below what he needed. Because they've got that brutal. So looking for a 6, I guess, and rolled a 5. So that is very nice for me. Mummies are still up and running. These mummies obviously still up and running. Shobek is still up and running. My opponent did cast Banechant onto the brutes, so 11 wounds might seem like a lot, and it still is. Like 11 wounds with a 9 average hit, still a lot of wounds, but not the complete nonsense that you might think it is. I do take another wound or 2 onto the soul snare, but that ends up not mattering. And we move forward. So, on to turn 6. Turn 6. So, Shobek, unfortunately, this double one is much bigger than you might think, right? Like, I now have to spend a 350 point model instead of killing off, if this were gone, right? I could have had Shobek going after, not going after them, but Shobek could have been deep in here, going for surges, doing all sorts of stuff, but instead is stuck fighting Blight, so we do that. My opponent intelligently used the weapon team to block me up, so the mummies have to charge there. These mummies get a corkscrew charge onto the Night Runners with 10 wounds on them, so that's cool. And that's about it. I think Morgana moves onto the hill to do some lightning bolt onto the brutes. And yeah, that's it. I'm going to go for some double heal onto these mummies to try to save them. So they regen 3 of their wounds off. Everyone's wounded, so... And here is the end of 6 for the Empire of Dust. I do kill off these tunnel runners, thankfully. I do kill off this weapon team. I kill off the Blight. So my opponent is down to these Scurriers, these Hackpaws, the Night Terror, these tunnel runners, and these brutes. There are some characters, like there's that ASB and then this ASB, but those aren't really big threats right now. So it comes down to what he can do with his turn 6 here. So turn 6, my opponent originally decides that it wants to charge these mummies in the flank. The mummies are down to very few wounds. It's at 1. I think the mummies are at 1 wound after I heal them and their life leech. Oh no, that's Morgana's wound. They have none. They have no wounds. So the brutes and the tunnel runners go into a front charge. The Hackpaws decide to not do a flank charge along with the Night Terror because they don't want to be up here just in case there's a turn 7. So my opponent is going for just a straight win. These units are 4+ to hit, so it is it's not assured, as you've seen in the previous reports, but we'll see what ends up happening. These Scurriers do go back. They go back into the Soul Snare because why not? This ASB moves in front of my Giant just to block it up a little bit. This ASB does the same with my mummies. So we'll see what happens. And whoop, I don't have any more pictures. I can tell you what happens. So what happens is that these mummies get blown the fuck out of the water. They're pureed. Just completely destroyed. So at the end of turn 6, I have 2 unit strength, 3 unit strength, 4 unit strength total on the table, while my opponent has 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 unit strength, right? So yeah, losing those mummies. I mean, this is what I'm talking about, where you can lose almost every Ratkin unit on the table, and it's not going to matter because your unit strength is so much higher for dominate. So yeah, we roll up turn 7, don't get it, and that's the end of the game. So we end up with a 6-15 because of attrition. Oh no, because of scenario points. There's only a 3-point difference, no, 4-point difference between us because these scurriers aren't quite in the 12-inch zone, while everything else is. So yeah, it ends up being a +1, -1 there, and that's it. The attrition is a 0, and that's the end of the tournament. So I end with 3 wins and 2 losses. An unfortunate day 2. We call that the Robbie, which is a story I don't need to explain. So anyway, that's the end of the game. I will be back with a wrap-up in a bit. Hello, and welcome to a wrap-up for the Rose City Rumble. This is being recorded after I did the battle reports, so it might sound a little different. About a week has passed. And in the background, you're going to see some pictures of armies at the event. I did remember to take pictures this time, and I was happy about that, but I did forget to take a picture of my own. So you might see it floating around in the background of a few of these pictures, but there's no formal picture. I will be going over what I thought was good in the event, what I thought was okay, and what could use some improvement. And that doesn't necessarily mean anything about the event itself, but instead talking about my experience at it. And lastly, I'll be going over the results, including my own. So first off, the good. I thought that even though my list was sort of it was a little off, because it was based off of the models I had available and that I wanted to paint. Even with that sort of flaw, I still got some admirable results from it, right? I went 3-2, which is, it's nothing to scoff at, but still, it could be done better. The flaws I found in the list were really pretty self-evident, where it was a little too beholden on that decent rolling. I had a lot of 4+ to hit units, obviously, because I was playing Empire Dust, but I also only had 12 units, 4 of whom couldn't score, right? So that's a rough one. I didn't have a lot of unit strength, but I actually don't think that's all that relevant for Empire. They just tend to run into you and go, unit strength, unit strength. But I do need to get a bit more rabble into the list, so some skeleton warriors are always good. Get them in there, or just go the other way and go fully elite, which I have some ideas for a list that I might play soon, which is more around the enslaved guardians again, instead of around the skeletons. So we'll see about that. Next up, I had a good mix of opponents, all 5 of my games, where I would play any of my opponents again. In fact, I've played a few of them before, and I enjoyed all my games as far as playing against my opponent. But specifically, I had a good mix of new and older opponents, meaning that I had already played 2 of the opponents that I played here. In fact, I played them quite commonly in events or in tournaments. But then I had 3 games against people that I'd never even met before. So I really like that ratio. It's a nice one where you get like that bit of comeback and let's see what happens this time around, but you also get a heavier push towards people that you haven't played, right? So I don't know, I really like that. I also had some very tight games in this tournament. Now, the results don't really reflect that, which is, true in most games, with sort of a hard line, especially when you score at the end of the game, like in almost every Kings of War scenario. Please, guys, Rules Committee, look at that for your next pass. It's, ugh. But anyway, yeah, it still had some really tight games. including game 4, where I played against an opponent where I just did some really dumb stuff. I think that losing the Revenants was a dumb thing to happen, and specifically because it happened because I didn't measure every inch of a surge to see where I could end up. But even after that, it just made the game like really tactical. It was really fun for me, so I really enjoyed that. It was great. And next up, I really like the terrain on almost every one of these tables. Now, the level of quality to the terrain itself, like how it was built, that could be improved upon, but the placement was actually pretty good. I really like some of the decisions that we were making. I know on at least one of my games, in game 3 and game 5, both my opponent and I were like, yeah, we're not going anywhere near these giant impassable pieces. But still, that's a fun thing to experience from time to time. So I'll put that in the good category. Now, for the could use improvement, like the okay, I would say, as a personal bent, I really pushed ahead day 1. I mean, I was leagues beyond anyone else, where the only other undefeated player was my round 4 opponent, and they only had 3 16-point victories, while I had, I believe, a 19, a 20, and a 21. So, or maybe I had a 19 and 2 20s. But either way, I had some really high scores, and then on game 4, I just choked. And game 5, really tough matchup against Ratkin. So it just doesn't feel good to, when you win 3 in a row and then you lose your last 2, that's much worse than losing one of the mid ones to me, because one, it doesn't push you down in terms of like elo, if you want to go with that. You can't submarine if you lose your last 2. You're going to fight against the toughest people anyway. And secondly, you get to end your tournament with just some crushing losses, which, yeah, that doesn't feel great. So that's on me though. And so is this other one, which is my paint score was pretty low, and that's something I want to improve on in the future. I'm actually, not to toot my own horn, but I'm a pretty good painter, but Kings of War just hasn't really gripped me, in making me care. To be honest, I don't really like the Mantic models for the most part. I think that they're really improving. They're getting there, but they're not quite there. And I spent a lot of time playing War Machine. So I don't know. I'm just not into mediocre models anymore. And feel free to disagree. It's a question of taste, and I would say my problem is more with the execution than it is with the style, right? Although I think the style could use a bit of a revamp. But anyway, and that mixed with just some other personal things about what's going on in my life has made it so I haven't been able to really push myself in terms of painting. I've been just throwing whatever I have on the table and calling it good, which if you watch this channel, I'm sure you're aware of, because I do so many battle reports with just nonsense thrown out there, most of it unpainted, and it comes down to I just haven't been gripped yet. I'm trying to work on that, trying to work through why I haven't really pushed myself yet, and I don't know, I'd like to work on in the future, but it's definitely in that improvement category to me. Now, the last category, which is the could use some serious improvement, it comes down to, again, I only have one thing in this, and it comes down to my feelings about what Kings of War has been like in the Pacific Northwest, which is to say, the growth just isn't there. We're plateauing, and we're plateauing at a point that's very low. So this event was, I think, 14 people last year, which is okay for its year 1 event, and we were still in our growth phase, but this year it was 16.5, right? So we had 16 day 1, 17 day 2, so 16.5. And that is not enough people to be paying the kind of money it costs for me to travel down there. For other people, they can have fun, and I like going down and visiting some people I haven't seen in a while. But Portland isn't that far away from Seattle, but still, it's going to cost me around $200 in terms of travel and stay, right, to be there for 2 days, right? And that's just too much for me to push a 16-man event or a 16-person event. It's too much money, and I don't know really what to do. in the Pacific Northwest, I know that the chairs have pushed a lot. I've personally tried to grow the community in some of the game stores we have in the Seattle area, and we're just not getting any retention. For every person we gain, we lose 2. So I don't know what to do about this. I do strongly feel that events such as the Masters should be pushed into these into areas like the Pacific Northwest or the West Coast or Mountain Region with these low turnouts, because it turns out if you've got a big event in an area, it makes a lot more people come out of the woodworks, even if they can't personally attend it. I think that we should be trying to get these events into these low population areas, just to drum up more support, right? If you're in the South or the Southeast or the Midwest, you already have some pretty decent events, pretty big ones that you can go to, and we just have nothing, right? And honestly, if people want it to grow out here, we're gonna need more support from people, or feel free to come to our events. I know it's difficult, and it's really difficult to travel when, I'm telling you this is only a 16 person event. I mean, I'm unwilling to travel the what should be a 2.5 hour drive, but is 4 hours for reasons, and telling you to do the same. But yeah, it's very disheartening. It seems like we're putting a lot of effort in for very mediocre results, and that doesn't feel great. But let's not end on a negative note, and let's get to the results themselves for this event. First off, the Ratkin player I played in Game 5 ended up taking best overall, which I feel great about. I know that they played a good event, and I think that they're relatively new to Kings of War, so it's really cool to see someone like that taking a prize like best overall. I'm not going to give any names here because I don't commonly do that on this channel, but if you want to drop your name in the comment, feel free, or the comment section so people know who you are, feel free. It is something that you guys could just look up. Second up, we've got Best General, which was my Game 3 opponent, the Basilean guy. So yeah, that game I won really hard, and it just goes to show you that even without best overall, I know a lot of people like to push this honestly false idea that best overall somehow devalues best general. It only devalues it if you decide to devalue it. But the second part that I hear a lot is that people don't like that best overall makes it so the person who, quote, won the tournament could do worse in battle or lose a game than someone below them. And I can tell you right now that in that Game 3, I won that game not at all due to my tactical acumen, but due to pure dice rolling. So that happens anyway, right? That's already part of the game. But anyway, I was very happy to see them win Best General. And third up, we've got Best Painted, which was won by my Game 1 opponent, the Herd. So yeah, I played all 3 of the people that took away the big prizes. There was a Favorite Army and a Best Sportsman prize as well, but I'm not sure who won those. And actually, I do know who won the Favorite Army, which was the one I voted for. It is a Chaos or an Abyssal Dwarf army with a bunch of like Killicans. You're gonna see a picture of it coming through in these slides. So yeah, it's a Killican conversion army. They've got like lava bases. Pretty cool. And I don't know who won Sportsman. I don't remember. But yeah, and on a personal note, I came in 5th. So yeah, that hurt a lot. Yeah. I mean, it's just what happens. I did pretty well in battle. I did lose some sportsmanship points. The sportsmanship points in this event were just yes or no questions. And I'm sure, I don't know this for sure actually, but I'm pretty sure I lost my point because I didn't have printouts of my list. I went down to the Airbnb. They said that they had a printer. They didn't. So I had to handwrite the list, and someone probably took umbrage to that, even though the question was, did your opponent provide a list? Not did they provide you a list with the stats on it. Or if I lost that sportsmanship point because I was being kind of a dick, so be it. And then my painting score, it was okay. So yeah, 5th place is probably about as high as I could have hoped to get given my game record. But anyway, that's the end of the coverage for this event. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know I did, and I'll see you next time. Bye.